Welcome to the Josie Show. I've taken some time off, but I'm back. And I'm back because I have put together a series of interviews with amazing artists that are killing it on Instagram and other social media. Today marks my first interview with the one and only Simon Bull. If we haven't met, I'm Josie Lewis. I'm a full-time artist, and I created the Josie Show because I want to make artist-to-artist chat about making money with a creative business because I think artists should get paid. My guest today is Simon Bull. He's an English artist living in California. He has had a long and successful career and, in his own words, has had many versions and many transformations. One of those transformations was hitting a hot streak on IG and a few other platforms some years ago. He makes incredibly watchable, epic paint pouring videos. He has grown his follower base to very respectable levels and has had many, many millions of views. In our conversation, I just loved to hear his approach about not getting too stuck in any one version of himself, how he manages all the mad people on the internet, and the tools that he uses to post the volume of content that he posts while he runs 3 galleries that he owns. I know you're going to enjoy the super fun conversation with Simon Bull. And before we get into it, I want to let you know that if you are an artist trying to decode Instagram, I just wrote a guide for you. It's called Instagram for Artists: 7 Habits of Highly Successful Instagrammers. I've been keeping an eye on the common traits for artist social media success, and I put my favorite ones in this guide. One of my recommendations is do less. Yep. I said what I said, so you can relax a little bit. I have noticed that the most successful Instagrammers focus on just 1 or 2 areas to conquer rather than try to do everything all at once. This guide is going to be super helpful for you, and you can get it at josielewis.com/habits. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Simon Bull. Well, hello, Simon Bull. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show, Josie.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have some conversations with artists who also have figured a few things out about social media. And you are one of those that had like a meteoric rise a couple years ago, and millions of views and very watchable videos. And so I'm excited to talk about some of those things with you. And I wanted to start by asking you, I was just reading through your resume. You've had an incredibly wide and varied career. And I was hoping you could kind of give us your backstory a little bit, like maybe the start, like when did you become an artist? And then you have far too much of a career to cover in several minutes. So just give us the highlight.
Well, it's taken me a few years to figure this out. I think I could probably call myself an artist now. It took me 15 years working professionally before I could call myself an artist. It was one of those, I could accept as a young guy, like as a teenager, as a young man at college, I could understand that Picasso was an artist, Rembrandt, they were artists, but I was just me. I had to figure out, do you get a job as an artist? Do you get somebody else to declare this person is an artist? Or how does that actually work? Because there was no kind of book on it, And even though I went to art school, nobody said, "Oh, you're an artist now." You kind of had to become an artist and believe in yourself that there was a point you had to cross some kind of Rubicon, at which point you could say, "I'm an artist." I started out as someone that was enjoying painting, enjoying drawing, and then I guess after many years of doing it, I figured out. I woke up one day and looked over my shoulder and probably thought, "Yeah, okay. It's official, I'm an artist now, right?" So an artist, by definition, I guess, is someone like that makes art, right? So I was an artist from day one, but it was a kind of a confidence thing, I guess, that I had to wake up and say, you know what, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, But I've done this, for almost 50 years now, Josie. So it's been an interesting journey because I would say, I'm going to tell you listeners the story by using the metaphor of the caterpillar and the butterfly, only because people are very familiar with the idea that a butterfly becomes a chrysalis, a caterpillar becomes a chrysalis, becomes a butterfly. But what people don't often realize is that actually a caterpillar loses its skin 5 times before it becomes a chrysalis. So a caterpillar goes through constant phases of growth and reinvention before it gets to the stage of being a chrysalis. Isn't that interesting? And if you've been an artist for as long as I have, you've gone through different economies, different trends, different eras, and so you're constantly so like every 10 years, like I lose my skin, and a new version of the caterpillar emerges. And so I started out really as a much more traditional artist, and my initial training was in proper art, real drawing and things like that, learning like the equivalent of classical music, but classical drawing. And so I did a lot of English landscapes, a lot of farm animals. And I think I'm going to sort of segment the business, social media, and art. So basically, if I was just to talk in terms of art alone, I'd say that the first 10 years, in the 80s, I did a lot of traditional watercolors and etchings of farm animals, of British subjects. Then I kind of, in the early 90s, I lost my skin and I emerged as a more contemporary artist, and I invented a new form of printmaking, which I call mixed media monotypes at the time, which were quite interesting, but became very successful in the UK. It was a totally different look for me and for the UK market. Became the best-selling artist in the UK by the year 2000 with that. But then technology came along, giclée came along, etching became passe, whatever. I started doing large floral paintings on canvas, which was my next phase, so to speak. And then I moved to America in 2003, and that's why I entered my chrysalis for 14 years or so, where I was being reformed, and I describe it as learning to paint with an American accent. Because before I moved to America, I understood my subject, which was the British countryside and British experience. I understood my audience, which was the British person, British consumer. But when I came to America, what I thought would have been like a fairly easy transition proved to be rather complicated and sometimes traumatic, mixed up with various health, financial, family, and like conceptual events in my life. And so for many years, I was in a chrysalis state while I was in America, learning how to reconfigure my business and my art. And so I jokingly say it was like learning to paint with an American accent. But after many years of doing shows and traveling, I finally emerged with my own galleries. And now finally I'm a butterfly. And on that note, I'll have a cup of tea.
That is lovely. And what I appreciate so much about what you're saying, and I think a lot of artists, especially younger artists or people who are kind of new to exploring that part of their calling and their identity, don't really realize that there are so many changes, and there's changes from without and changes from within. So you move, your life is going to change, and then also things happen inside and you're like, nope, I'm going to move on to a different type of expression. And it sounds like you've done that many times, and I very much resonate with that because I do it too. It's like this cycle, and there's always change. And then of course there's also change in business, and now we know there's very fast changes in social media all the time.
A lot of artists become known for a look, like a certain look, and they become good at it and they become successful and they're able to develop a career. But typically, after about 10 years, they get bored of repeating themselves and their audience gets bored of seeing the same thing. And it just kind of naturally drops off. And a lot of times, that's when those guys go and get a job somewhere. That's the end of them. You never seen or heard of again.
That is so interesting that we do have to constantly adapt and change. And it's something that especially in the context of social media, people are always like, well, Instagram used to be great, and now they changed the algorithm and now it's not great anymore. And it's true, it does change a lot, but it's also like we we have to adapt and learn and grow. And, at some point, Instagram or other social platforms might not be a good fit for us. But in the meantime, try different means of expression and, all those things. And, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on with this series of interviews is folks that were artists first and then were discovered on social media, and it kind of blew up and got millions of likes and views and followers and all that stuff. And what I think is so interesting and unique about you is that you had a very mature career by the time because it was probably just a couple years ago that you started getting serious about social media.
You're right. I mean, the problem for people of my advanced years, and I'm 65 now, LOL, is that for me, like, I had a very successful career and was very well known. What I describe as formerly famous, right? So I sold tens of thousands of my farm animal etchings in the UK. I had a business of 15 people. I had 4 sales reps traveling around the galleries across the UK. But that artist lost his skin in 1989, and I changed my style. And I went on to become even more successful. But then that artist lost his skin in 2000. And, I had to leave one audience behind and then find another audience. And although I still have, all those people still have their work in my collections, the current generation, they never heard of me. They weren't there in the 80s. They weren't there in the 90s. They weren't even there like in the noughties. They were like still growing up, or they were just not there. And the point is that what's always the most important thing if you're a content creator, Josie, is that you have to ask yourself, who's in the room at the moment, and can I speak to them? And do they want to hear what I've got to say? Am I ready to join in the conversation that's happening today? Not the conversation. You can't just enter the room and say, I used to be good at conversation. I used to have lots of friends back in the 80s. You've got to make friends with the people that are in the room today. And so for me, I was fortunate in that, I'd had a good career. I was probably about ready to kind of retire, not really, but, I was just formerly famous, doing my thing quite happily. But what I'd been doing for quite a few years, I'd been doing shows around the country, and I'd been doing live painting. And so I'd become quite familiar with the performance aspect of painting. So although I'd had an Instagram account since like 2011 or something like that, I very proudly had something like almost 1,000 followers, maybe 500 followers or something lame like that, but I'd never really used it, didn't really know what to do with it. But then I started posting videos of me actually doing the painting. We've had hundreds of millions of views. I mean, one of my videos has had 200 million views now. We've just posted one a couple of months ago that's now had 53 million views. So, and in the Super Bowl was boasting that they'd had 123 million views. I'm like, okay, that's good. Isn't that crazy?
So, do you remember your first viral video?
100%. Yeah, it was one that was called Epic Fail. And I'd seen an artist called Kaylin Shaw doing these. I'd actually seen him many years ago on YouTube doing these sort of like spin art videos, and I'd got myself a potter's wheel that I'd rigged up as a spinning device, and I didn't actually take the time to look at any more of Kaylin's work. It'd probably been about 5 years since I'd seen any of his work, and I knew he seemed to do something with a kind of a trapeze thing. So I got a plastic tray which I wired up and sort of span it across the canvas that was spinning on the machine. And it was really terrible. I was using the wrong kind of paint. I was using the wrong kind of thing. I had no idea what I was doing, and it really made a terrible mess. But I put it online and I called it Epic Fail. And I think we got like 20 million views or something like that, and it was quite interesting because it made me realize that what people are interested in looking at. Just a second. What people are interested in looking at on social media, you know, is not your successes, only. They want to see your failures, because I've learned that with social media, the three elements to it, which I try to keep in all my videos, which is basically to entertain, educate, and inspire. And you can't do any of those things if you're not honest with your audience, prepared to, show some of your flaws or your secret process, or the sort of behind the scenes stuff that.
Yes, people love to see the backstory and for sure the fails and the real person, behind the art, which I think is interesting about how you film your videos, because you set the camera up somewhere in the room, and then we see you. And it's absolutely a performance. It's a dance, like you have these trays of various colors and sometimes it's rainbow, and it's like, what is going to happen? And we see you do the whole thing. And it's very compelling, because we want to know, what in the heck is this man about to do? And I was wondering about, that was one of the notes that I had, because I was looking through all your videos, and one of my notes, and you actually mentioned it earlier, about the performance, and I was wondering what you think about that, how that interacts with the act of making the art, if you like it, if you don't like it. Tell me more about that.
Well, one of the benefits of working, doing my shows on cruise ships and at events around the country for over 10 years, was that I learned to perfect the art of the performance. So when I first started, I'd have my canvas on an easel, I'd have the paints on a palette, and I would mix the paints and then paint the picture. And I'd start to lose people at certain points. And then I ran some tests and did some timing. And I realized that I was spending probably 60% of the performance time mixing paints on my palette and moving from palette to the painting. And so that's not interesting to an audience. So I changed the way that I painted. And so I would lay out the colors on the canvas before the performance and put another canvas on top of them. So when I came in onto the stage, I'd peel the two paintings apart, and the paint would already be on there. And so then I just had to move it around into position, and the painting was done in like 10 minutes or whatever. I also would design my paintings in such a way that nobody knew what it was going to be until like the last minute, which is the surprise element is super important. And also I tried to use methods and materials and ways of doing it that were shocking or different or engaging, because the thing is, people expect an artist to draw an outline and then carefully fill it in with a brush. And that's like watching somebody write a book. It's like, we understand that you're a good writer, but we don't need to watch you write the book. And so performance art is a thing in its own right. So I would start these performances that I would, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Simon Bull or whatever. And I'd run down the aisle between the people. And I'd carry either a bottle of beer or a glass of wine, and I would throw it at the canvas because I needed to have moisture on the canvas, right? So I'd have my glass of wine, I'd throw it on the canvas, and people would be like, whoa, what's that? All right, whatever. And then I'd start painting and things like that. But, then I started painting with paper towel rolls and doing various things like that. And it caught people's, so then but those are all elements that I actually carry into my painting that I do on Instagram, which is basically, it looks like, you're like, what the heck? And then they're like, oh my God, can I believe it? Look at that. You know what I mean? And so it's just enough. Another thing as well that's important is I don't really do any talking head videos. If it's not that I don't, but I speak the universal language of color, of visual. I'm a visual communicator. It doesn't need any words, although, I'll bring in a soundtrack from somewhere or whatever. But the point is, it just is a standalone, because I have, a big worldwide following. So I've got, My most popular city for followers, believe it or not, is Tehran in Iran, followed by Lagos in Nigeria, then followed by New York, and then followed by Lisbon in Portugal or something like that. It's very odd. Okay, but the thing is, these people can't speak English, so they don't need me speaking to them, right? They just want to see the excitement of the color and of what's happening next, and they also want something to criticize. They want to be able to say how terrible it is, or how their child could have done this, or how meaningless it is, or what's become of art these days, or the world's gone to the dogs. And they love it when they can start on that kind of stuff, and that's when I often say that a video is never going to go viral until people start complaining. I used to call it hate, but it's not hate. It's just like confusion, annoyance, like giving me advice or whatever.
So I, as you know, get a lot of people who disapprove of my of my process and how I use paint and what I do. And I think of myself as like the least controversial thing on the internet. I paint rainbows, it's like I'm super nice. I don't talk anything controversial, and I paint rainbows. But yet they find me and they're mad. Um and I saw someone said in a comment that I was creating rage bait with my rainbows, and that it was like an unethical way to create content for the the internet because of the rage bait. Which it's like, I don't know that I am actually hoping for people to be mad, but it is a nice benefit when they do get mad, because like you say, that those kinds of comments propel things, they skyrocket, because then my true fans are in there arguing with them. And then one other benefit of that I've noticed is that the people that have followed me for a while and like my work, they emotionally want to defend and protect me, because they're like, what, these people don't like Josie, they're crazy. And so then it creates a more close connection with the fans that I want to keep, obviously, when they read the comments and they're like, oh, this is horrible. So it sounds like you have kind of a similar position, like you're content with the with the rage, with the disapproval. So was there a time when that was harder for you?
I think it lasted about half an hour, When I first started getting negative comments, my daughter phoned me and said, "Dad, have you read the comments?" I'm like, "What?" And it was people saying stupid stuff. And I'm like, "Oh." I felt like, "Oh, I need to go in and correct them because they're obviously wrong." And then I realized, stupid. These people are like, just expressing themselves, and they're triggered, And I think that is part of the process. You have to trigger people, do triggering things, not for the sake of triggering, but I think that the if the if the work is engaging, it triggers people for good and for bad. People are annoyed for different reasons. People want to do it themselves and are frustrated that they can't, and so then they try and make it sound like it's easy, like you're stupid or their kid could do it or whatever. So they want to help you to understand that you're really useless, and I'm like, thanks for the engagement. At the end of the day, Instagram is just a game. It's a computer game, is what it is.
Yeah, when I started, I had a couple of accidental viral videos that I didn't expect to my 246 followers, and they, a couple of watercolor pattern videos, and I was like, "Oh, this is so weird." And so then I was curious about it and I kept doing it. And especially in those early days, I did think of it kind of like a video game. It was like the most fun video game I'd ever played. Like seeing how to connect with people through art and through color, and it was so powerful, like, because people were um inspired to make their own art. They said, I sit on the couch with my 4-year-old daughter and she asks for you by name and we watch your videos together. And it was so sweet, like hearing these stories of people interacting with my work. And then there was a point, though, and I don't know if you had this experience, but there's a point when the ego gets involved. and then and then, if a video doesn't perform well, I feel really bummed about it. Or if there's an algorithm change and every all the engagement drops, which happens kind of a lot, then it's like, oh no, what's happening? Oh, what's gonna happen to me? So I wonder if you could speak to that. Did you ever have ego in your engagement in social media, or were you just it was always a game?
Um, well, I think it's a game, but that I'm not sure about the ego. I think that if you're winning, it's a great feeling, and if you start losing, it's not such a great feeling. And so I think the point is that one has to become more philosophical and just do what you do. I think that it's if you're getting lots and lots of new followers every day and it's growing, and then like one day you come in and you lost some followers, it's like, oh my god, like what happened? Like my if I go at this rate, I'll have no followers left and my life is over. But it's just you have to. You can't just keep on refreshing the feed and see how many new people have signed up. That's why it's a really annoying game. But I try not to. When I see the follower count go down, which happens occasionally, it's the kind of it's like a prompt to. It's a way of being, because it is a game, and if the follower count starts going down, then it's time to maybe refresh and renew. You know what I mean? Re-engage instead of being kind of on a kind of autopilot. But then the annoying thing about Instagram is the fact that it's entirely random, because you can change up your game and produce better content, and then you'll find a boring video from 6 weeks ago that you posted that got no engagement has suddenly gone viral and it's getting millions in views and it's driving all your growth. And so try as you may with your really great content, you can't get any more views. And then you do something really bad and everybody loves it. I mean, it's just, it's it's not what people think. It's just it's kind of it's the randomness is absurd in a way, and you can't allow yourself to get knocked off course by it.
So, how would you say that your filmmaking of your process has changed the art that you've made?
It's a great question. I think one of the most annoying parts of it to me is the fact that I I can't really paint now without it being videoed, because I lost content, right? So, you know, I, I've got a lot of I've got a good team, so they come around and film me all the time. But sometimes I just want to go in there and like paint, and sometimes I do come in here and paint, and it's like that's the one that got away. Um, but I think that yeah, it does have a bearing on what you paint. Definitely, sometimes I do things that I know will I do. I think that the best way of describing it, Josie, is to say that if you are creating content for Instagram or for Facebook, where we also have a lot of followers and do very well on Facebook, but and on TikTok, but is that the video that you're making for these platforms is the artwork. That's the artwork, not the artwork.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because what a different way to think about. I mean, even from you being an artist in the 80s, very different. My dad is an artist too. He's older than you, but he can't even fathom putting the process of his art on social media, and the art that he makes. Kind of like, I loved your analogy of watching a writer write. It's like I could sit down with, I don't know, some great writer, and it would be very, very boring. It wouldn't be fun at all. And I think that would be like watching my dad paint his oil landscapes. Like they take months and months, and it wouldn't be that fun to watch. So then in this social media arena, my art has changed dramatically, because I am always thinking of the content. I'm always thinking, like, which angle where's my lighting? What is the scale? Big art. One of the things that's great about what you do is that you make very big art, and you figured out how to make that really dynamic, and I have not been able to figure that out. So my work that I make for social media tends to be much smaller, like, and it's just changed, my studio practice quite a lot, which is fascinating. And you mentioned, just in passing there, you were saying that you're on the other channels as well, and I was curious about that. My favorite is Instagram. That seems to be the one where I feel like I have the most connection, the best connection to people. But I'm everywhere as well, and I have a big. I've got a couple million people on TikTok, and I have a lot of people on Facebook. But I'm curious about that for you. Like, do you feel like you have a favorite?
Well, Instagram is my favorite. I think it's the easiest to use from a content creation perspective. But I got back into Facebook last year after going to PourCon, the paint pouring conference in Las Vegas, because I found out when I was there that you can monetize more on Facebook than you can on Instagram. So, we certainly drive some revenue from Facebook that's not possible to do on Instagram.
So I want to talk a little bit, like look under the hood a little bit here because I'm kind of a nerd about filming and setup and all that stuff. So you said your team helps you with some of the filming. Can you describe kind of like your workflow? Like you're setting up your camera, you have proper lighting, does someone edit for you? Do you do it yourself, etc.? Just explain how that all happens.
Well, we spend a fortune on studio setup and editing and complicated things, and it's all included in this box here. It's the iPhone. We just use the phone. Everything's just done with the phone. So we have a studio full of expensive cameras and lighting, which we never use. We only use the iPhone. And one of my assistants has got an Android, which we use, Samsung something or other. But yeah, we just keep it real simple, down and dirty. It's we're not trying to impress anybody. We're just doing our thing, and that's another thing that makes it interesting to people because it's like you could do this at home sort of thing. We find overproduced videos not that interesting.
Yeah, I'm always telling my artists that want to figure out how to crack the code on Instagram that it really doesn't. It's almost better to not be high production. And in fact, once on TikTok, somebody commented, I have a high end DSLR camera, and I had filmed something with it, and it was beautiful image, just gorgeous. And they said the high quality of this is interfering with the satisfying nature. Like it's too high quality, downgrade the quality and it will be more satisfying, which I was like, oh my god, this is the next generation coming up. They're like, no, we want it on your phone, we want it to be a little dark, we want it to be a little blurry, so that can set us all free. We don't have to be perfectionists, we don't have to be Scorsese.
Although we use the iPhone for filming and so on, the editing is super critical. We do short videos like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe a minute at the absolute longest. But you have to, you've got, famously they say you got like 2 seconds as your hook to get people in. You have to start with like something dynamic. You don't want to start with. So the way it works is that a movie will have like a long, slow panning shot, like an establishing shot, some kind of an intro with the music playing, and maybe a couple of pre-credits or titles floating around, and you're just settling down with your popcorn, and you kind of like ease into it, and then boom, it gradually starts. You know what I mean? But then, like a YouTube video is a bit like that, but like a little bit more into it. Like it takes you a little bit quicker to get into it. Um, but an Instagram reel, if you're not boom right there in their face, like so, for example, let's say you've got 5 clips, and there's a really really good one, and then there's a sort of okay one, and another one, and you're trying to tell a story to go from A to B. You sort of have to start like almost with the last shot in a way. You've got to start with something that's going to get them, and then you can recap. You know what I mean? And boom, you know what I mean. So you like for me, if it's like watch the paint move, you don't want to see the artist like walking along with the tray, kind of like figuring it all out. It's like put the paint on the canvas and like tip it. Let's just see it. Just take me there right now. And that's so. Editing is really important, but just do it with your thumb using the Instagram app. I mean, it's really a no-brainer, honestly. You know, you don't need to use Final Cut or whatever. Just use what's on the phone and boom. But you asked about my team. So for the first year, that I did it, I started doing it and I did it myself. And so I would get up and I would get to the coffee shop in the morning and I would post 3 reels a day at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 days a week. And I did that consistently for a whole year. And then I said to my team, I said, right, I'm just going to paint the pictures now. You're doing it. What I want you to do is I want you to recycle. I want you to go back to this time last year, and out of the 3 videos that I did, I want you to choose one of them and repost it. And then I also want you to add a new one from what we've done this week. And so we started that as a program because obviously, I had like 200,000 followers then. Now we've got 700,000 or whatever. So it's all, they haven't seen those videos, so it's new for them. And so we recycle the old videos on an annual basis, but then we add new things to them.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of new creators don't realize, because I do that too. I mean, I think that I probably introduce a completely new video twice a week, maybe. But sometimes I re-edit it so it comes across a little bit differently, but I do a lot of recycling. And I find that a video that goes viral in March will also go viral in April, and will also go viral in June, and will also go viral in August. Like, there's something about that video I can get continual traction out of one image or one video that maybe people have already seen. But I find that if I still think the video is good and watchable and I made it, I figure it's not going to bore other people who didn't make it and maybe just saw it. They spent 14 seconds with it, 3 months ago, and now they get to see it again. Yay.
And if they enjoyed it then, they'll enjoy it again. It's fine.
One thing that's interesting and unique about you is that you have been so successful for your whole career as an artist. And before you were discovered by, social media, and you have shed your skin yet again, or now you're a butterfly, you were already successful. You own galleries. You have 3 galleries, right?
Yeah, I have 3 galleries.
So that's already several full-time jobs that you have. And then now you're also doing social media. And I'm wondering about the intersection between your business selling art that was already successful and continues to be successful, and your social media, fame.
You can paint a picture and sell it to someone and they're going to give you some sort of like X amount of dollars for it. But, if you're going to ask a higher price, then they're going to ask more penetrating questions like, who are you? What are your accolades? Like, what have you done? Why are we paying you $50,000 for this piece when the guy next door is selling it for 500, And it's not really a question you can answer, like, oh, give it me because my name is Simon Bull, or give it me because that's what I'm asking. There has to be some kind of you have to be able to demonstrate that there's value there of some kind other than the fact that they like it. And so back in the day, you would say things like, oh, so-and-so was the official artist for the Winter Olympics, or he's in galleries worldwide, or he's in this collection or that collection. And that was great, whatever. But the thing is that you just had to believe it was true or whatever, or you see it in a book, or it was maybe a newspaper clipping. But now, I mean, the thing is that the only way that the average person gets to know whether you have any kind of, that you're a viable entity, as it were, is because, the internet tells you so, kind of thing. And so it's become really important, not because we sell art on Instagram or anything like that, but it's the resume of the current era, which is kind of social proof that you exist and this is what you do. And so without that, it would be rather hard to sort of like say, well, who are you? Well, I'm an artist. I've done this, I've done that. And they're like, oh, do you have an Instagram? I'm like, well, yeah, I have an Instagram. I've got like 84 followers or whatever. Then they'd go on and they'd be like, oh, nobody's ever heard of him or something. So it's a world we live in now, and but it's fun to be, in that world, because for me, on a daily basis, we get to speak to our followers in Iran, our followers in Brazil, our followers in Nigeria, followers in New York. And it's really very exhilarating to have like an immediate hit, that we've got 10,000 followers in Tehran alone. And, give them something to enjoy.
So tell me, what is next for you? What are you really excited about working on? What is going on in your world?
I actually got a commission to do a friend's house in Hawaii, which is 11 large paintings for their oceanfront home in the Big Island. So I'm working on that. But I actually don't really know the answer to the question, because I don't really get bogged down in those kind of questions. So I just get up and do my thing. It's one painting at a time.
So you just you show up at the studio and you follow your heart.
That's exactly right.
Well, it's been just a delight to talk to you. As always, it's always great to connect. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find you, where they can connect?
Well, Simon Bull Art is the Instagram handle, and it's you can probably get everything through there. Our website is simonbullart.com. You could, if all else fails, just type Simon Bull into Google. If you do that, you'll find like thousands of older works that have been sold by previous vendors that have nothing to do with me, but was my former self. But if you want the butterfly version of me, I would suggest simonbullart.com.
Outstanding. We'll definitely share all those links in the show notes as well. So I hope that you get a few new followers and fans, no doubt, from this episode. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Josie.
Well, there you have it. A super fun conversation with Simon Bull. And in case you missed it, I do want to emphasize the fact that Simon was over 60 when he started using Instagram. Over 60, my friends. So if you are feeling like it's too late for you and you can't possibly learn the tech and you're not young enough to understand what the young kids are doing, just remember Simon Bull, who shed many skins and finally became a butterfly. Thanks for being with me today, and I'll see you in the next episode.